everybody, welcome to the Thursday. It's Thursday. Welcome to the Thursday evening torch tutorial stream on the Beading Dream stream. Carol May was an angel and was vacuuming the store, so we started talking about chocolate cake, which is always a great thing to talk about, except for the fact that now, unsurprisingly, I want chocolate cake. Heather has success. Okay, is not being able to speak correctly a perimenopausal thing? Because I feel like that's happening to me more lately. It's annoying. But anyway, Heather has suggested that there be a cake-off on the Beading Dream stream. I'm just interested to know, like, how would we judge said cake-off? Is it just an appearance-based cake-off? Do we have to, like, package little samples of the cake and, like, ship them? Or was there, like, one central judging location? You know, somebody could throw themselves on the grenade to be the judge of the cake-off. Oh, and Lori's getting another cat. That's awesome. Turbo. That's a great name for a cat.
Yeah.
Love it. Alright, so welcome to the torch stream. Yes, that means we are going to be using Sharon volunteers to be the judge for the cake-off. So we could all bake little mini cakes and send them to Sharon. And she could be the judge of who's better than sex chocolate cake is the best better than sex chocolate cake. Oh, or it could happen when we do our world tour. We could just cater cake on our party bus. That is true. But anyway, so we are doing, it is a repeat tonight, but we haven't done this one in a while. These are, I think this time I called them half moon earrings. The last time I probably called them something else. I've also done this as a pendant. So it's a fun class because it combines sheet metal with basic bezel setting, which is essentially just basic bezel setting. But in this project, you use the sheet metal, you know, to be a bigger part of the design. So it's nice if you have a kind of a smaller cabochon that you want to make more prominent, or you just want more of kind of a geometric metal shape and you want to use a stone as an accent. So let us talk tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. Cake is not one of the supplies for this evening's tutorial, just in case anyone was wondering. Alright, you're going to need some sheet metal. I'm using 24 gauge copper because I'm lazy tonight and I don't want to mess around with super pickle. We will touch on that topic though when it comes time where I would have used it were I using brass or bronze. You could of course also use sterling silver sheet metal. Gold filled is not an option. If you wanted to make these in solid 14 karat gold, good on you. You could use that too. I'm going to need some bezel strip. The size of bezel strip I need, it depends on the height of the stones that I'm using. So I'm using 1/8 inch bezel strip. So when you are picking what bezel strip to use, hold on, I'm going to move that because otherwise it's going to be like half in my camera view. When you're picking what bezel strip to use, you basically need to find something that's going to come just barely up and over the top of your stones. And for my stones tonight, I have these two little ocean jasper circles. They're not true cabochons because they're not domed. I'm hoping they're still going to work. I may wind up with a really, really ugly bezel setting. We shall see about that. I'm also on the fence about, do I want to go to a shorter bezel strip? I think I don't. So we'll see how this goes. This may be good. This may be an episode of Allison Screws Up on the Internet. You just never know. Okay, so sheet metal, bezel strip, and then of course, if you're making earrings, you need a pair of stones. You're also going to need to complete this particular earring design. You're going to need a little bit of chain, not a ton. It just depends on how long you want your earrings to hang. You're going to need obviously double that length for each ear because if you take a gander at the project photo, there are 2 chains per earring. You're also going to need a pair of jump rings, which I forgot to grab. I'll go grab those at the end of the tutorial. And of course, you're going to need ear wires because you need something to hang these things in your little earsies. Cool. Just making sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to be working. As far as tools go, oh, and then you are also going to need easy and extra easy solder, both for this project. Now, as far as tools go, of course, it's a torch class, so there's a lot of tools that we're going to need, starting, of course, with a torch. So I've got my Blazer butane torch. This is, of course, my favorite torch, as most of you who are regulars on the stream and know. You're going to need a soldering surface, which I'm using my solderite board. That's what I just moved off of my little boxes. You're going to need metal shears, which, you know what, actually, like a dummy, moved out of the streaming area, so I'll go grab those in a minute and grab my jump rings along the way. You guys can hang with Ziggy Stardust for a sec while I do that, but let me finish the rundown on at least most of the tools that you're going to need. You're going to need some sandpaper, you're going to need some steel wool, flux, we'll talk about what that is and what it does when it's time to use it, pickle and a pickle pot, which I have off camera, same, we'll talk about what that is and what it does briefly when it's time for us to use it. You are going to need a drill or hole punch, which I do have in my drawers. And then you are going to need your pliers, you're going to need your round nose, your chain nose, and your wire cutters. So while you guys can talk about cake a little bit more, I'm going to go grab my metal shears, my jump rings, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Thanks, Heather. But I got them, and everybody survived. Okay, so so the prototype and the ones of these that I have done before, I've pretty much stuck with this, this, semicircular shape. I'm gonna try and change it up a little bit on stream tonight. I'm gonna go for, primarily because I think I want to make some of these for myself, and I prefer longer, skinnier earrings rather than wider, fatter earrings. It's just a preference of mine. So I'm going to try, I'm going to try half ovals. And I'm also going to try and make them a little bit smaller than I usually do. So these are not going to be Amy-sized earrings. These are going to be Allison-sized earrings, which are still bigger than some people's sized earrings, but they're smaller than Amy-sized earrings, just as a general rule. So I think I'm going to use... Okay, I think I'm going to use this one, which you totally can't see. There, look. So that's the one I'm going to use, and I don't know that I'm going to do half. Yeah, I think I just want to do a straight up half oval. So that means that I can trace one oval and obviously use it for both earrings, which is nice and convenient. So this is just a regular old oval template like you would get at a craft store or an art supplies store. No, I didn't put this on the supply list. You could freehand an oval, if you can freehand an oval, which I definitely cannot freehand an oval. Also, God, you know, the setup of the camera would be so much better if I were left-handed. Tracy, Tracy, trace. My finger's gonna get in the way. There we go. Alright, so there's my oval. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the midpoint of that oval, because my template has handy dandy little marks that will allow me to do that. I'm going to draw a line like so. Alright, so that is the shape for my earrings. So I'm going to cut this out now with my metal shears. I believe, we have had, I know we have had on the, just pertaining to Heather's comment that she just made, I know we've had the debate on the stream before, is cheesecake a cake or is cheesecake a sweet pie? And I think, according to Mary's researching, I think that it is technically a sweet cheese pie, if you're just going by the definitions of said constructions. But I could be wrong about that. Does anybody else remember that conversation? Did I dream that? Was I just dreaming about cheesecake? Because that happens. God, I had so many weird-ass stressful oh! That's the, okay, that from this morning. So many weird-ass stressful dreams last night, including a dream about a Sharpie. Like, it was not a good night for my subconscious last night. No, like, nightmares or night terrors, like, nothing that bad, but, just everything was stressful. So many stressful things. Even the Sharpie dream was stressful.
Oh my god.
Yes. It was bad. So, while I'm cutting metal, because I know that a lot more of you on the stream now are fabricators than were on the stream this afternoon at lunch. So we were trying to compile a list of fun things that nobody tells you about metalsmithing and fabrication. Like, once you get into the craft, you're like, wow, I wish somebody had told me that all of my jeans would have tiny holes in the thighs from dropping hot metal on them, and oh, I wish somebody had told me that every shirt I own would have stains on it from various chemicals, and oh, I wish someone would have told me that I was going to cut my finger with a saw or jab it with a drill bit at least once a month. Like, so does anybody and then we actually expanded that to all crafts. Like, gee, I wish that somebody had told me that, you know, glue bits, see, this is happening to me more and more. Glue guns are actually instruments of deadly murder. Like, so does anybody want to weigh in on fun facts that they wish somebody had told them about whatever craft they happen to do? I am interested to know while I'm teaching this, if anybody has any thoughts on that. So I've cut my 2 half ovals, and there's definitely another tool that I completely forgot I needed until now, which is my bench block, so I'm gonna go grab that. And you would think I would keep this in the streaming area, but the streaming area is very small. Very, very small. Those of you who have seen it know that it is not large. It was absolutely some miracle of Tetrising that Heather and I were able to get in here together for the unboxing. Because, seriously, it was very, very tight. Nail polish. Hey, that's another one, nail polish. Once you start crafting, nail polish becomes pretty irrelevant except as a way to color jewelry things, which is true. I'm actually going to do that on our next Freeform Friday stream. When we're doing, when Heather and I are doing our Halloween costume jewelry, I'm going to use nail polish to color the top of my little absinthe bottle that I made for my costume. I need to sand the bottom of it too, because it's very, very sharp. Okay, so now I'm going to take these, and you'll see that how to ball solder without it running off your charcoal block. How to ball solder without it just running away from you in general. Like, sometimes it's just like, neener, I'm running away. Yeah. And then sometimes it's just like, neener, I'm going to sit here and not do anything. Yep. Okay, so I cut these out, and you'll notice that the cutting, where is my focal distance? There it is. The cutting makes the edges a little bit warped, so I'm just going to put them on my bench block, and I'm going to use my mallet to smash them down. So yes, I too wish somebody had told me what a picky little princess sterling silver solder is. Okay, so these are my bases. Now alright, so now, alright, so now if I wanted to, I could texture these, I could brush finish them, I could absolutely, you know, hammer finish them, I could texture them however I wanted. I'm going to go with no texture at all. I'm just going to leave them smooth, mostly for the sake of time. If I had extra time, I might definitely take a hammer to these, but for now, I think I'm going to leave them, yeah, considering that I'm a little bit behind my time, I'm going to go ahead and leave these smooth. I'm going to make my bezels. So that means I need my stones and my bezel strip. I have both of those things. This is a win. So, round stones are definitely the easiest. You can do this with any shape of stone, but round stones are by far the easiest stones to work with, because if you need to, you can actually take something else and use that to make the round shape, which will help you fit your solder around your stones. Whereas if you're trying, not your solder, your bezel around your stones, because if you're trying to just fit your bezel around your stones, as you guys know from working with wire, the problem with that is that wire springs up. So if I were to just form my bezel around my cabochon here, I'm going to get a bigger size than I need. So I'm actually going to grab a found object. In this case, this is the tube of white glitter, which I'm also going to use in making my Halloween jewelry. And I'm just going to wrap the bezel around the glitter. Notice I'm overlapping it, and in that I'm putting one above the other, and I'm not putting them on top of each other. So now I have a circle, and then I'm going to take that circle, and it's actually still just a wee bit too big. So you always want to use an object that's slightly smaller than whatever you're trying to bezel, but mine, it looks like, was just a skosh too small, or sorry, too big. I should have used something even smaller. Okay, that's better. So when you're bezel setting, you want a tight fit. That's what he said. You don't want your stone to be just, you know, swooshing around in your bezel. So you need to make sure that I've got it fit tightly around my stone. Now there's a little bit of airspace here, which you can't quite see because of the camera angle. You're gonna have to trust me where this overlap is. So what I'm gonna do is, instead of marking it here, I'm just gonna move over a teensy bit to account for that airspace so that I can get a really good flush fit. Haha, that's a good one. Jewelry is in fact the gateway drug to so many crafts.
Oh, it's true.
Because you can use fiber crafting in jewelry, and you can use polymer clay in jewelry, and you can use metal clay in jewelry, and you can use cupcakes in jewelry, and
You can make jewelry for shoes.
you can make jewelry for shoes and dolls, cats and dogs, birds.
Have you ever made jewelry for a bird?
No, but I'm not saying you couldn't.
No, I'm just saying.
But no, I have not ever made jewelry for a bird.
But it's possible.
Yes, I'm theorizing at this point. I'm hypothesizing.
Go you.
Alright, so now I'm doing the same with my second one. So I just bent that around my little vial of glitter. Hi, Amy! It's me, when you be, he be so. We miss you. Alright, so again, fit that around my little ocean jasper stone. And mark and cut. So now we are going to file and solder these together. Well, okay, cut. So one of the most irritating things about soldering is that solder will not flow across a gap, which means that we have to have a completely flush fit on our wires in order for the soldering to actually work. That means that what your metal shears do is not sufficient. So what I need to do is I just need to take a file, and I just need to smooth the edges of this wire a little bit so that they will meet flush. So I just have this is a half round file. I'm using the flat side against the wire, just straight up to jab my light, like so. And you know, I think my next dream upgrade is I really need to fix this like light diffuser situation, if for no other reason than having a Kleenex and a surgical mask on the light that's like 4 inches from my soldering board.
No.
Maybe isn't the smartest thing in the world. Well, you know, I need to figure out the technology to, you know, do this properly instead of my little makeshift rig. Alright, so what I've done now is I've tension fit that, and then I'm going to squish it down. And now what I have is a joint that I can solder. So, I mean, it don't gotta be perfect, but it gotta be pretty close. So there you go. Now I'm going to repeat on my second one. So just file, and tension fit. Okay, so now I'm going to use my easy solder to just close up these bezels. And when you're doing this tension fit, a lot of time you'll get this kind of, this sort of peak, pointy bit to your circle. The easiest way to fix that is just take the chain nose pliers and just give it a squash. And usually what you'll find at that point is that it'll kind of lock your edges together in place so that you've got that. Now I'm going to take my soldering board And this is a solderite board, which is my preference, just because it's a little bit neater than a charcoal brick block, whatever. And also it's easier to put away. It's a little less bulky than a charcoal block. And since I don't have a permanent soldering station, it's nice to have something that it's really easy to just, you know, pick up and put in a drawer. Okay, so there's one of those. So now I'm going to take my flux. So let's talk for a moment about, wow, let's not fling flux all over the world. Let's talk about what flux is and what it does. So flux is a protectant. It's the one I use is a paste flux. It's a borax-based paste. And what it does is it keeps your metal from oxidizing. So the first thing that happens when you hit a piece of metal that's not pure silver or pure gold with a torch is it's going to turn black. It's going to oxidize, and as most of you know from previous streams, that black oxide layer is a layer through which solder can't flow. So in order for the soldering to work, you need to have flux on your metal. I have a piece of easy solder that I have cut, and I'm going to take that easy solder and I'm going to place it underneath my joint, which means I'm going to take it and I'm going to plop that solder right there on that soldering board, and then I'm just going to move this and set that right on top of it. Now I'm going to take my torch, I'm going to heat that until my solder flows. So, is there a Melissa? Hi Melissa! Alright, so before I light my torch, I'm just going to real quick do the very, very abbreviated 5-point soldering safety lecture. As usual, I am not a credentialed anything. There is absolutely no reason you should listen to me. I'm just some rando on the internet. But I have been teaching soldering for, wow, it's been a while, almost 10 years now, I think. And so these are things that keep coming up over and over again as far as creating a safe soldering workspace at home and being safe in a community workspace. So, numero uno, keep 7 to 10 inches of space away from your flame at all times. Okay? No, I'm not doing that. Do as I say, not as I do. And I'm going to try real hard not to melt my webcam since I already did that last year. But seriously, as long as you keep everything flammable or meltable out of your workspace, 7 to 10 inches clear, you're going to be fine. Okay? Your chances of accidentally starting a fire with your torch flame are very, very small. Number 2, once you've had a torch going in your workspace, from that point forward, always assume that everything in your workspace is hot enough to burn you, because it probably is, even if it doesn't look like it. Number 3, ventilation is important as I take a deep breath. So if you find yourself coughing, hacking, wheezing, you're feeling uncomfortable in the lung area after you've been soldering, you probably want to reevaluate your ventilation situation. Number 4, all right, if you're not actively using your torch to solder something, turn it off. These torches are very easy to ignite. They're very easy to extinguish. There's absolutely no reason to keep them ignited unless you are using them. And number 5, make sure you know where the fire extinguisher is at all time. If you're working at home, you should have one in arm's reach. If you're working in a community workspace, definitely make sure you know where that is, and of course make sure that you follow, especially if you're in a community workspace, follow all, you know, written and audible instructions and regulations that are given to you, because they're there for your safety. Okay, anybody who's running a workspace like that isn't trying to be a jerk by saying don't do this, don't do that. They're just trying to keep everybody safe, because when you get a lot of people in the same space with torches and people aren't paying attention, things can get a little hairy. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and solder this. So I've got my solder underneath, and now I'm going to take my torch. Now this bezel strip is very thin, so it melts pretty easily. So I'm going to just heat the whole thing up, and then I'm going to concentrate on that joint, and hopefully that solder will just run up like so, and wham bam, we're done. And as soon as we've successfully soldered that joint together, get your flame off of your metal, because that stuff is going to melt faster than you think. Now we're going to repeat with the same one. Okay, that was trying repositioning my XSplit screen so that I can look at the camera and see my screen, because I feel like I'm constantly like looking off above into the distance, but then my camera's in front of everything. Oh goodness gracious. Technology, you are a fickle mistress. Alright, so there's my joint, Again, I'm going to flux it. There is totally a reason that one of our customers is not allowed to have paper towels anymore during soldering work sessions. Though also, to be fair, that is the only fire that's ever happened at Beading Dreams, and it was, you know, the size of a corner of paper towels, so there were no firemen required for that particular incident. We never actually called firemen to Beading Dreams for an actual fire. And you really want to try and get your joint right on top of your solder, which is super exciting for me right now because I'm not actually left-handed, and yet I'm trying to do it with my left hand because I've got my camera. I probably should have used the zoom feature on my camera a little more for tonight's tutorial. Oh, also another good safety precaution, put your hair up, says the woman with her hair down. Yep, I know. I am fully aware of the irony of that particular statement. It seems like I always forget that torches are on Thursdays and I wear my hair down, but I, once again, have never set my head on fire, so cheers to that. Okay, so I finally got wise and put a little cup of quench water by my station. So after I finished soldering each of these, I dunked them in the quench water, and they're cool. So when you quench something, basically you pick it up with tweezers because it's hot, you put it in the water and it goes psst, and then once it goes psst, then it's going to be cool enough to touch. So now I'm going to take these and I'm going to form them around my stones, make sure they fit, and they do, and they fit nice and tightly, which is a win. It means that my estimate for compensating for the airspace was good. Okay, so I've got two nicely tight fit bezels around my cabs. You do want to be careful of this. Okay, see how this is kind of collapsing in? We don't want that because that's going to make it almost impossible to get our cab in there once we've soldered it down. So all I did is I just took my thumb, I just kind of peeled that back. Now this is also a problem that we're going to need to fix. So this is where sandpaper is going to come in because, alright, so I'm going to pop my stones out. And this is something that, you know, people who don't fabricate don't quite realize is, like, your stones don't go permanently into your piece. That was me dropping my thingy on the ground, and now I'm going to try not to step on it. I can't find it. This is just going to be a pendant. Hey, I found my bezel and 2 strands of whiskey quartz. So, you know. Okay, so now this is where sandpaper comes in. So I'm going to grab some sandpaper, and my preferred to just kind of keep around my fabrication workspace is 320 grit because it's just a nice, it's a nice grit. Really, camera? Your one job is to focus on me, and you can't even do it. Anyway, it's a nice grit because it'll move metal fairly quickly, so you're not just sanding for the rest of your natural life, but it's not so coarse that it's going to leave giant scrape marks on your metal. So all I'm going to do, and by the way, I didn't actually point out what that problem was, but the problem that I need to address, especially on this one, is that it's slightly misaligned. See how there's a little bump out there and a little bump out there? Since we need a flush surface in order to solder, that's not going to work. So I'm going to take my sandpaper, I'm going to put it flat on my work surface, I'm going to put my bezel on my sandpaper, I'm just going to put my fingers on it to hold it flat and just rub it back and forth on my sandpaper until I've sanded away that whole little bit. And it doesn't really matter if you sand in circles or linearly in this instance, either one is fine. So you can see on the bottom the change in texture, like you can see the parts that have been sanded. And Yeah, and so a little bit more, and that should be, see? Sorry, bashing the camera. Camera abuse on stream! Part of me wants to say camera abuse on stream should be part of the indulgence game. I'm going to flip that over and do it on the other side. And part of me says that if camera abuse on stream becomes part of the indulgence game, we are all in really big trouble since I abuse my camera quite a lot. Okay. And now, since I have sanded a significant, in the metal world, I've sanded a significant amount of height off of this bezel. Like, there is an actual visible difference in the heights of these two bezels. I mean, it's a fraction of a millimeter, but it's there. So what I'm going to do is, even though this one I managed to solder properly, I'm still going to go ahead and put that on the sandpaper, and I'm going to sand it approximately the same amount. And the reason for this is because if one bezel is taller, okay, this is the reason I hesitated there, is this is actually a somewhat nuanced thing. So if one bezel is taller than the other and your stones are exactly the same height, what's going to happen is one bezel is going to basically fold over farther and hide more of the stone than the other. Now I'm going to take my stones and I'm going to just fit these in there again. Again, every time you touch your bezels, there's a chance that you've collapsed them or changed their shape at all. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to solder them down onto our earring pieces. And so at that point, if they're off shape, there ain't no way your stones are going to go in there. It is not happening. So it's never a bad idea to just take a pause, refit your stones in there just to make sure. But anyway, so, and yes, they do still work, and yes, everything is still the right shape, so that's exciting. So if one bezel is taller than the other, it's going to close down more over your stone. It's going to make one stone look smaller than the other, which is not something that you want. Now, to jump to the nuanced part of this, however, this is also something that you can use. So if you have two stones that are different heights, you can play with the heights of the bezels to create the illusion that your stones are the same size even when they are not. The other thing you can do, if you have one stone that is thick and one stone that is thin, is you can put something in that bezel to raise the stone up. Now, if anybody has ever had to fix a piece of native, or had a piece of Native American jewelry, where the stone fell out. See, it's the dang stream sniffles again. What the heck? What the actual heck is with the stream sniffles? Maybe I do need to get an air purifier, like Boots said. But it only happens when I'm on stream. Anyway. If you've ever had a piece of Native American jewelry where a stone fell out, you've probably noticed there's some kind of sawdusty stuff in there. And that is what a lot of silversmiths use as a leveling agent, so that you can have actually, since that's a compressible material, you can have stones of actually different thicknesses and they can all appear to be the same height, number one. Number two, you can have a more impressively tall stone setting without wasting money on all of that carat weight of stone that's never going to be seen. I mean, obviously you need enough depth to the stone for the bezel to grab onto it, but if you've got a 1/4 inch tall bezel, there's no reason to pay for a cabochon turquoise that's that deep. It's going to cost a lot more money than something that is 1/3 of the depth. You put sawdust in, put that on top, set the bezel, none the wiser, and you've controlled your costs. Amy and Heather, you are cracking me up. All right, so now we're going to solder the bezels onto the backs. So this is typically in the metalsmithing world called zipping the bezels, and it's called that because if we do this correctly, the solder is just going to zip right around the bezel in a very impressive fashion and solder it, bond it down onto the back piece. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this so I can get this on a more flat part of my soldering board. I'm going to flux my copper. I don't need to flux my bezel because it's fine silver, so it's not going to, oxidized because it is pure silver. I'm going to place that. The seam? Really? Again? Son of a beach. Now where did it go? I cursed before 9 if anybody's drinking. Okay, seriously. Ah! Found it! Oi! Huh. Alright, so anyway, let's try that again. That's true, I did. Okay, so the joint is visible on this. Now, I could definitely take the time to polish that down. I'm not going to, but what I am going to do is I'm going to put that at the bottom where it's going to be the least visible on the earring. I want to try and put this in the middle of my shape. I think I have done that. Now I'm going to oh, if only I were clever. I would have riffed on that if I had the cleverness in my brain tonight, but I do not. Some nights I do. Tonight is not that night. Okay, now I have my extra easy solder. So for anybody who doesn't know, solder comes in different melting points. They're called different densities. So hard, easy, medium, and extra easy. So that's in order from highest melting point to lowest melting point. The reason for that is because if I were to use the same solder that I used to solder shut my bezel, there's a really good chance that I would conduct enough heat into this project that my bezel would then spring open and I would say more bad words than just son of beach. So to prevent that from happening, we're going to use a lower density, a lower melting point solder to do that zipping. Now also for all of my butane torch users out there, you may or may not be aware, either because I've told you or because you've experienced it yourself, that since this flame is not very large, there's a size limitation to what this little baby can do. I love my blazer. I love my blazer. I adore my blazer, but it can only do so much because the flame's only so big. So sometimes if you're doing a project that has a lot of metal to it, like say a big plate of 24 gauge copper that's on the back of an earring, you gotta play around with your melting points of your solder to get everything to work. Okay, so and sometimes you got to play with the you got to play with the thickness of the metal sometimes, and sometimes you got to play with the melting point of the solder. So extra easy solder I think really should be in every butane torch user's supply chest, because sometimes you just need it, and you can't get anything else to flow. I was extraordinarily focused last night. And we sold a lot of stuff, so thank you all so much. Okay, now I'm going to place my solders. Wow, hi cleavage cam. I'm going to place my solders inside of my bezel, and I'm going to just really gently nudge them up so that they're touching both the back plate and the bezel itself. And I'm gently nudging because, of course, I don't want to disturb my bezel. Can I do this left-handed? I bet you I can. Like I always say, if anybody knows of a money operation tournament that's out there, let me know, because I could use some extra cash and I think I'd have a solid chance. Okay, so now those are all touching the bezel. Now, are you still centered? You're still centered. Okay, so now what we do, we heat the whole thing, and then we're going to try and pull that solder underneath that bezel to bond everything together. So let's see if this works. First thing that's going to happen is my flux is going to boil, and it may kick some of those, yeah, see, it kicked some of those away from all of them. Hey, look, You're 3 for 3 of being kicked away from the sides. So I'm just gonna nudge those back, which means I am gonna have to put a little bit of heat on it because of course the flux has now solidified with them in the wrong place. Just gently heat and just nudge them back in place. Alright, I'm sorry, I need to take this off camera and fix it with my dominant hand. I have not the dexterity in my left hand for that delicate of work. Okay, so now I've put them all back in place. Sorry for doing that off camera. And now I'm going to start heating. And my flux has turned clear, so that means that I have reached the temperature at which solder can flow. So now all I need to do is just heat this. I need to heat the whole thing. And then I'm going to focus on that joint. I'm going to focus on that seam. And something went, I think. Yep, there we go. So see the solder flowing and just zipping right around. So I just want to make sure, I want to make sure I kind of carry it around with the flame so I get all of, there we go. I get the whole thing zipped. Okay, I think it's all done. It's all zipped down. So that is not always that easy. Did you? Hold on. Not, there's a gap. Okay, so there's one void right there. So while everything is still warm, I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can get that void to fill. Now, of course, just so that you know, the bezel strip, as I said before, it melts really easily. So you gotta be careful with your heat, because if you get too much heat in it, the stupid stuff is just gonna melt right out from under you, which, trust me, is a holy pain in the Bajwanska. Alright, come on, meet up, fellas. There we go. Alright, now it is actually zipped, so I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna throw it into the pickle pot. We'll talk about pickle in a little bit. Now, I need to refill my torch. The thing about these butane torches is they don't have regulators or anything to tell you when they're running out of gas, but my flame should be, can you see? Yeah, okay, so my flame is about 3/4 of an inch long. It should be a solid 1/2 inch longer than that. That's what she said. Sorry, apparently that's my stick for tonight. So that's how you know when the torch is running out of fuels. The flame just is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Since the flame of this torch is already not overly large, you really don't have room for it to get even smaller. So I just have my refill canister, and I've got it upside down in the fill receptacle of my torch. You know it's full when it starts spitting propellant back out at you, like that. There we go. Notice I did not fill my torch over my work surface. That's because butane's heavier than air and will puddle on the lowest point. So if I'm filling it over here, it means it's puddling on my work surfaces, which is where I'm about to have a lit flame. No bueno. Gas puddle plus lit flame equals, it happened to me once. It was a really beautiful and scary, very small and brief rolling fire, like the one in the first Matrix movie. Not even kidding. Okay, so I fluxed that. I'm going to put this there. I'm going to put the joint at the bottom. Also, in case anybody was wondering, yes, we are going to run way over time on this stream, so I hope nobody had anywhere to be. Three more pieces of extra easy solder. I think I'm going to attempt a polymer clay project on Zoom tomorrow, and it's a Halloween polymer clay project for Sunday. I'm trying to decide if I'm confident enough in my ability to do this project that I want to go to the store and get polymer clay glaze, or if I'm just going to fail miserably, in which case it would just be a waste of money. Wow, auto exposure, that's intense. my 3 pieces of solder dropped. Okay, seriously, auto exposure, like, calm yourself down. You were doing so well, and now you're doing so not well. Alright, pardon me while I un-auto exposure my camera. You're not melted, are you? You don't look melted. For anybody who's new to the stream, that joke comes from the end of 2020 when I legitimately did melt. Yeah, no, it's just not gonna, it's gonna be desert high noon if I don't. So, whoa, no, not that much. Okay, I need like a -7.5. Okay, we're gonna go with this as being probably our best bet. But anyway, yeah, I literally did, with the backwash of heat from my torch, I melted my webcam. It was a day that shall live in infamy. Anyway, alright, so now we're going to, and watch as I gesture emphatically with my torch and almost melt my other webcam. I'm just doing great tonight. Alright, we're going to heat this up. Alright, those guys don't need a little nudge this time, which is nice. So heat everything up, heat a little bit inside, and then concentrate on that seam. Alright, so that one up there, see how that's puddly on the inside? So I really should have nudged it, but the thing is, I really don't need all 3 of those pieces of solder to zip this bezel. I really only need 2, so I'm going to try to just, there we go. So that puddle of solder can just do its thing on the inside there, like that, and it's not going to do any harm, and my bezel, once again, is zipped. Thanks, Amy. I was trying for something a little bit different. Okay, knock on wood, as long as everything's zipped properly, I'm done soldering, which means I can put this in my super secret soldering board hiding space, also known as on top of the shelf that holds my lights. And now we're going to talk briefly about pickle, because that is what is happening right now as our pieces are pickling. So what pickle is a weak acid solution, and what it does is it cleans all of the crud, all that, I mean, you saw my metal started out shiny, and by the time I finished with it, it was all black and gross. So the pickle cleans all that black, gross stuff off of your metal. It'll also clean off any flux residue. It'll clean off any pieces of soldering board that are stuck to your metal because of flux residue. And make it so that you can do one of 2 things, so that you can either continue working on your metal, because sterling silver solder especially is very picky and particular. It does not like to flow on metal that is dirty. So if you're making a complicated sterling silver project, at some point you're going to reach a point where the solder's going to be like, no bitch, I am not flowing, I refuse. That's when it's time to pickle, clean your metal, and then start again with clean metal. I pickle way less than a lot of metalsmiths out there. The gal that taught me, bless her heart, she's amazing, like world-class metalsmith, but good lord, the woman pickled everything before she started. After every single joint, I'm like, it would take you 60% less time to make this project if you pickled, you know, 40% less. Don't ask me how the math on that works, it probably doesn't, but anyway, I pickle when I have to, which since I tend to do simple projects, is usually at the end of the process. So how long do the pieces have to stay in the pickle? It really depends. They have to stay until they're clean, until all the black junk and crud is gone from them. Now that's going to depend on a couple of factors. It's going to depend on how hot the pickle is, how fresh the pickle is, how hot your pieces were when they went into the pickle, and yeah, just those things. So my pickle's in a crock pot on high, because it does work better when it's hot, and it's going to work faster if your pieces are hot when they go into the pickle. Also, my pickle's not very fresh, so it's going to take a minute. You don't have to mix new pickle for every work session, so I have mine, like I said, in a crock pot. At the end of my work session, I'm just going to unplug my crock pot, put the lid on, put it away, and I can turn that back on, heat it up for my next work session. When it starts to turn green and blue, that's when it starts becoming it is starting to become saturated with copper ions. Mine's green right now, so it's, like I said, it's going to take a minute for it to work. And at that point, you can start thinking about disposing of it. Best way to dispose of your pickle properly is neutralize it with baking soda because it is an acid. Put it in a jug. Once your jug is full, take it to your community's hazardous waste disposal facility and they will know how to properly dispose of it. Now, have I ever flushed pickle down the toilet? Yes, I have. Is it a good thing to do? No, it's not, because even if you've neutralized it so it won't hurt your pipes, putting that copper back into the water supply is not good. Alright, so I'm going to pull these babies out. Now, let's talk about super pickle, because I know a lot of you out there like to fabricate with brass and bronze, as do I. So, since brass and bronze are copper alloys, when we heat them and then pickle them, since the pickle, when it strips off all of the oxides from the soldering process, what it leaves on the surface of brass and bronze is a layer of copper. It's not a deposited layer of copper. This is kind of a misconception among a lot of kind of hobbyist solderers, fabricators is the word I'm looking for. The copper that's on the surface of your brass or your bronze after you've soldered isn't a deposit layer, it's a depletion layer. Okay, so what's happened is you've oxidized the zinc or the tin portions of those alloys, and then the pickle has removed those oxides and left you with a layer of pure copper on the surface. But it's copper that was already there, so it doesn't come from the pickle, it comes from the metal itself. This is different from anybody who's worked in a community metal shop where they use Sparax as their pickle. I do not. I use citric acid for exactly this reason. So Sparax is pretty standard in the industry as a pickle for non-ferrous metals. The thing about Sparax is it's steel reactive. So here's the thing. Imagine you're a bright and blushing new jewelry student, and it's your first day at your new jewelry school, and you're making your first project, and you put it into the pickle with everybody else's projects, because almost every program at some point uses community pickle pots. And then you're so excited, and you go to get it out of the pickle, and you take your steel tweezers and you put them in the pickle, and you pull your piece out, and it's copper. And everybody else's pieces are copper too, because what happens when you put steel in Sparax is it does deposit all those copper ions onto anything that happens to be in the pickle. Now, I have a wee bit of a problem here. So on the inside of this bezel, this piece of solder didn't completely float. That's going to probably be an issue for me, because that's not going to allow my cabochon to sit flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to abandon you guys for a minute, just because it's going to be quicker for me to do this on my flex shaft. I'm going to go put a cylinder burr on there, and I'm going to grind that out. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and I'll bring the burr back and I'll show you what that looks like. For now, talk amongst yourselves. Ziggy Stardust will supervise. Okay, so this is the burr that I just used to grind that down. It's called a cylinder burr. So it works really well for applications exactly like this, where you just have to get in there and you got to grind something out like this. And of course you want to make sure that you don't chop the heck out of your bezel when you do that. If you don't have access to a flex shaft, Dremel, or cylinder burr, you absolutely could reheat this and try and reflow that solder underneath, or even, on the inside. It doesn't really matter, since this is zipped down. That solder doesn't have to go any place in particular. It just can't be where it was, because once again, that's going to make it impossible for my stones to sit flat. Okay, so now I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to buff these with steel wool. Now, I said that they need to stay in the pickle till they're clean. This one is appropriately pickled. This one could have used another minute, but again, since I'm already running overtime on stream, I decided to kind of yank it early. So I'm just going to take my quadruple zero steel wool and I'm going to, okay, I'm just going to scrub that. And what's going to happen is that dull surface is going to turn to a nice kind of satiny, shiny surface. So I'm just going to do that over here, because otherwise I'm just going to keep bashing the camera. Now, if you have access to a tumbler, at this point you definitely could tumble these. Tumbler, for anybody who's not familiar, if you ever had a rock tumbler as a kid, or you've ever seen a rock tumbler, it's exactly the same machine. If you're going to polish metal in it, you just set it up slightly differently. You use steel shot and water and burnishing soap instead of grit and water. That's what you use for polishing rocks. So the action of the shot, which basically looks like little stainless steel BBs smashing against your metal, is going to burnish it and make it shiny. Now, generally speaking, you want to polish your metal before your stones go in, okay, which is why I always hand buff everything on stream with steel wool, because the tumbler does take time. It takes a solid day or so to polish things. Now, I purposefully picked a stone that I knew is durable that can go in the tumbler, so I'm actually going to tumble these after I've put the stones in to get them nice and shiny for Amy, because I know she's going to come in on Saturday and want to buy them. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm also taking my steel wool around the edges of my metal pieces, because I don't want them to be sharp, and the steel wool is going to do a really good job of giving me a nice smooth finish. If there are any parts that are particularly jaggedy, such that the steel wool's not smoothing them down, go ahead and grab your 320 grit sandpaper or grab a file. Sandpaper's for smoothing, files are for shaping. So if there's like a big chunk of just like pointy crap that needs to come off, that's a job for a file. If there's just a little rough bit that's a little too intense for your steel wool, that's a job for your sandpaper. So I've gone all the way around the edges. Now, other interesting factoid, if you tumble these, it will do a... You didn't, Amy, I just know you. You also heavily implied such a thing, to be fair. But anyway, if you tumble these, the tumbler will also do that for you. Alright, and then I'm just going to take some rubbing alcohol and my paper towel, and I'm going to throw my flux, and I'm just going to clean the steel wool crap out of the bezels. It's not really that important to clean the inside of your bezels if you have stones that are opaque or mostly opaque like I do, but you don't want all that steel wool junk in there. Also, I just remembered a tool that I forgot off of the tool list, so there's that. Everyone be shocked that I forgot a tool on a soldering night. Next week's soldering class is an every tool in the dang shed class. Like, we are going to be using so many tools next week, and I may have bit off more than I can chew with next week's torch stream, so it may turn into an episode of Allison Screws Up on the Internet, because it's a pretty intense project. I'm excited about it, though. If it works, it's going to be really, really cool. Okay, so the tool I forgot is prong pusher. So now it's finally time to set our stones. Okay, we've done all the soldering, we've done all, theoretically, the polishing. I'm going to pretend I've done all the polishing. So now we're going to set the stones. So I'm just going to take my stones. I already know that they fit. If there is any doubt, this is a full face moment. If there's any doubt in your mind that your stones may not fit, put a piece of dental floss across your bezel and then pop your stone in. Because if your stone just barely doesn't fit and winds up in there crooked, there is a good chance you're not going to be able to get it out again. Now, course of last resort, if you forget the dental floss and you still boff the fitting of your stone, you can drill a hole in the back of your setting and you hopefully use a stylus or something to pop your stone out. But, you know, ideally you don't want to drill holes in the back of your setting that you didn't intend to drill holes in. Also, I'm sorry, this is just bugging me that I didn't get this sanded completely down flat, so just bear with me while I fix it. Okay. But I am fairly confident that these are going to fit. This may be a hubris moment for me, we'll see. Just put it down and pop it in there. Haha. Success. Alright, there we go. Two ocean jaspers in their little homes. Now we're gonna set, and this is another thing that it's like, oy vey, I wish I were left-handed. I wonder if I should, Anyway, that's a problem for another day. So I'm gonna take my prong pusher, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work my 4 compass points. So let's start with north. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pusher and I'm going to push my bezel in and down over my stone. I'm going to do the same on the bottom. In and, sorry, I got to get some English on this. In and down. The part with the solder is always going to be the most difficult part to push because the metal is thicker. And then in and down. Here, let's see if I can do this with my left hand. So, in and down, and then in and down. No, I'm not actually left-handed, which is why that was so incredibly awkward. Okay, so now what I've got is this kind of squished square shape. So now I'm going to go all these, once again, working in opposition. Working in opposition isn't quite as important since I have a very tight fit. If you've got kind of a loose fit, or if you've got a stone that's not level, working in opposition helps that stone to remain level in the setting. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this off camera so I can use my right hand and a little bit of strength, and I'm going to push down all 4 of those corners that are sticking out. And that is going to make even more corners. It's like that Chinese dragon beard candy. It's like every time you push it, you double the amount of corners. So now I'm just going to take my prong pusher, and here's a closer look at the prong pusher, by the way. It's literally just a polished off piece of square stock. And you can make your own if you've got the equipment. I don't have any heavy duty machining equipment, so I buy mine because they cost like $5. And you know, that's enough for me to have one in every drawer, so when I can't find one, I can go get another one. But super duper useful tool. Some people like a bezel rocker better than a prong pusher. A bezel rocker is this tool here, which literally does exactly what it sounds like. So you put it against the metal and then rock it up on the bezel. I don't know, for some reason the bezel rocker and I are not friends. I'm more a fan of my pusher. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do one round of just kind of trying to smash all of these little corners. And since this is, you know, this is one piece of metal, sometimes you're going to experience the frustration of, hey, I smashed down a corner on one side and another corner popped out on the other side. Because again, it's all one piece of metal, and it's a straight piece of metal that you're trying to convince to be, oh, I'll send you the video, Heather, it's awesome. I mean, there are several videos on the internet about it, but there's one, Emmy Maid did one, and you know I love Emmy Maid, so anything she does I will watch over and over again. But yeah, it's a straight piece of metal that you're trying to convince it's curved, so it's going to take some effort, it's going to take some time. When I first started bezel setting things, and now that you kind of know what's going on, I'm just going to talk and I'm going to set, since again we're late, not surprisingly late. Anyway, when I first started fabricating, I would never roll my bezels. I would make my bezels and I would just glue my stones into them, because I could never get them to roll over nicely. And the reason for that is I wasn't trying hard enough. I was just being way too timid. And once I figured that out, then I was able to actually start doing things properly. Now, all proper jewelers out there, close your ears. Especially if you're a beginner, there is nothing wrong with a little bit of epoxy to help hold your stone in. Even if you don't actually need it, if it's just gonna make you feel better, by all means, go for it, okay? Don't let haters tell you that real jewelers don't use epoxy, because everybody needs a little help every now and then. I'm looking for a burnisher. I have one over here. So as a final step, as a final step to kind of smooth this down, you can use a burnisher, which is not the tool that's in my hand. The tool that's in my hand is actually my bezel rocker. But you can use it to kind of just burnish over and smooth down the little wrinkles in the surface of the metal. Now, The reason I have these little wrinkles, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second, is because of what I said at the beginning of the broadcast. It's because these aren't proper calves. Okay, they're not, okay, auto exposure, now all of a sudden it's the dead of night. I don't even. It's very dramatic though, but because they're not proper calves. So a proper cab is something I don't have in front of me, but a proper cab is domed. Okay, these aren't domed, they're essentially squared off. So it's a much more extreme bend that my metal is being asked to make. So you can see all these little kind of wrinkles in the edge. I also probably could have alleviated that a bit by making my bezel just a little bit shorter. But some work with a burnisher and a little bit more work with my pusher, and I'm pretty sure I can get rid of most of those. I could also, if I wanted to, very, very carefully, did I say very carefully? I could put some tape over the stone and I could try and sand some of those away, but bear in mind that if you do that, then you're going to have a sanded texture on your bezel, which may or may not be something that you want. So the other one's going to get set exactly the same way. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and pretend that I did that, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up this earring so you can see how this process ends. So I'm going to throw my, and also I threw my pusher on the floor. So that's the universe telling me definitely don't set the other earring right now. So I'm going to punch 2 holes in this earring, 1 at each corner, and that's going to be where my jump rings are going to attach my chains. So when I'm punching my holes, I want to get them as close to my corners as possible, but obviously I don't want to blow through my corners. I'm going to use my screw down hole punch to do this. This is a 2-sided screw down hole punch, so I'm using the smaller side. I'm just going to put my metal into that hole punch. I'm going to screw it down. I'm going to line my punch up on the dot, and I'm going to, alright, screw it down to the point where my punch is holding my metal, so I don't have to hold my metal. I'm going to make sure it's on my dot, which it is. I'm going to continue twisting it clockwise until I feel it pop through my metal, and then I'm going to turn it counterclockwise until my metal falls off the punch on its own. I really don't know what the exposure, oh, it's not auto exposure, right? I changed it. Now it's just dead of night exposure. Oh well, it works if we're up here, which is where we're going to do most of the work anyway. Now, you could absolutely do this with a drill. I use the screw down hole punch on stream because it's just less trouble sometimes than a drill, but a drill would allow you to make a slightly smaller hole, which some people find more aesthetically pleasing, but there are my 2 holes. It does kind of warp your metal a little bit, so if you still have your bench block handy, you could carefully take your hammer and you could just tap those out. I will pass on that, Amy. I do not feel like I would like to explain to Magpie that Heidi went bowling after work. I feel like the messenger might get shot. Okay, and then the last part of the earring is actually assembling it with the chain. So I'm going to take my piece of chain, and how long do I want my earring? I don't want it super long, so I think I'm going to go just like a couple of inches. Alright, I think that's a good length. I have no idea how long that is, but that's what I'm going to cut. So I'm going to just cut myself 2 pieces of chain, like that. Alright, I'm sorry, I can't with this like dead of night business. I have to fix it. Have to fix it. Okay, optical mouses are nice, but like only when they actually are awake. That's a little bit more normal. Alright, so now I'm going to cut 2 pieces of chain. This is 1 for each earring. I'm going to keep each chain intact. The way that this project looks, one might think that you cut 2 pieces of chain for each earring, but you don't. It's 1 piece of chain per earring. I'm going to take my jump ring. Anyone who was on the stream this morning knows the easiest way to open jump rings is 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. So, open your ring by twisting, attach your chain, and link of my chain goes on that jump ring. Alright, chain goes onto my earring component, grab that, and close it. Make sure you close it so there's no space. And then we're going to repeat with a second jump ring on the other side of our earring. So, plier 1, plier 2, twist it open. Doesn't really matter whether you put it through the chain first or the earring component first. Like so. Close it up. Find the middle, which the easiest way to do that is to use your pliers to kind of hang your earring. And sometimes you find there's not a middle. Sometimes you find you inadvertently got an even number of links instead of an odd number of links. So what that means is I'm just going to open this jump ring back up. I was really just hoping that would magically work since, you know, I'm already 40 minutes past my normal stream ending time. But no, the universe said nope. So that extra link, after I close that jump ring, that extra link is just going to come off. Go off. And then we're going to find we're actually going to find the center this time, which is right here, I believe. Yes, so that's my center link. I'm going to grab my ear wire, and I can just pop my ear wire. Okay. Not while my pliers is in there, obviously. Grab my center link, pop my ear wire in there, and you can just use your pliers to open up this, twist it a bit, let that drop in, close it back, and there is the completed earring. Okay, and then obviously the other one will get finished in exactly the same fashion. So thank you all so much for hanging out and persevering for the extra 40 minutes of the Beading Dreams stream to make our half moon, in my case half oval, earrings. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us, watching me light things on fire, not melt anything that was not appropriate, so I'm very happy for that. So yeah, for anybody out there who doesn't know me, hey, I'm Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store. We're here on Lover's Lane. Yay, Amy! We're here on Lover's Lane in Dallas. So if you're here in Dallas with us, you can come see us anytime, Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. If you are not local in Dallas, you can come find us on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday through Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Plus Thursdays at noon, and live merchandise sales every Wednesday and Saturday at 7:30 p.m. However, tomorrow night you will not find us on Facebook, you will not find us on Twitch, you will find us on Zoom for our first crafty cocktail hour in a good long while. So if you have Zoomed with us before, that meeting ID should be the same. If you've not Zoomed with us before, please feel free to email us, beadingdreamsdallas@gmail.com. We'll get you that info. So I'm looking forward, hopefully, to seeing each and every one of you tomorrow. Everyone have a great rest of your Thursday night, and we will see y'all back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream on Saturday.